Hey guys, Thomas the Salute Genie here, aka Mustached Tom, and I'm here to review Helluva Boss. If you end up enjoying this full series review, then please feel free to like, comment, and the third will head you over to my Patreon/PayPal, and the fourth will head you over to my Discord server. Any and all donations are greatly appreciated, and shilling will be reminded at the end of the review. With that out of the way, let's get into Helluva Boss. So, before we get into the general consensus of this show, I like to usually proceed with, I'm going to try to be as objective as possible. Now, I usually say that with, the consensus of, yeah, that's a pretty easy thing to do. And granted, when I had heard of Helluva Boss, I was like, man, I'll be honest, I kind of wanted to be involved in a project like this personally. Spoiler alert, I am subjectively envious of the creator's ability to put a show like this together. As someone who has written a book and published it and has many more creative and maybe even possibly animated ideas in the old noggin here, I definitely feel that level of envy of, man, I wish I knew how to draw and animate, and I wish I had that type of team that could support me. I wish I had that type of education, in my general area, and I wish that I could have support in that general area of expertise, but I focused on writing instead of drawing, and I still suck at drawing. So, my little several ideas in my head are still in my head, and I have to live with that. I did technically publish the book, but that's a whole nother kerfuffle of not knowing how to publish and communicate that I did publish a book. Now, with that envy out of the way, as I will always try to do, I will stay as objective as possible. Despite me wanting to have been in the show or a part of the show in some sort of capacity, though after seeing Season 1, and yes, even Season 2, Episode 1, which I will include in this review as well, I feel like that possibility is probably never going to happen. I mean, let's face reality of this show, is every cameo appearance so far has been a major big celebrity, whether that be a famous voice actor or just a famous actor in general, aka Norman Reedus is the immediate example I think of, or Season 2 having the actor who does Aladdin, for example. Just the two that are more immediate after thinking about it and watching Season 2, Episode 1 fairly recently, I should say. So it would seem like a smaller person like myself would never get a chance to be a part of something that has exploded to this degree, to this level, and by all means, they totally earned it, that being vivziepop and her team, with such levels of great animation and great writing, and delivering that service to YouTube for free. That is not something you would never have gotten a few years ago, surely. And I am surprised that they didn't have to deal with more copyright nonsense bullshit, that being of the Season 1 finale seems to be going through that still, and I'm surprised that wasn't more of a common occurrence, for such a show of this caliber, with its, raunchy, language and its dark humor and so far and so on and so forth, I should say, to clarify. But enough being general. Actually, I will maintain a general thing, as I typically tend to do with seasons of a show anyways, over movies and games, since it seems to be a little bit easier for me to digest a season by going in a more general sense of how it overall was. Helluva Boss was a relatively shorter season, from what I can remember, that being season 1. It features Blitz and his 2 lower demons, Millie and Moxie, and their Hellhound, who go off and are given the task to kill humans via given a book, or stealing a book, I should say, from Stolas, to kill humans, as they've made it their job to assassinate humans, whenever that can come up. And every episode seems to incorporate, at least in season 1 so far, different aspects of either the job or different things that can get in the way of their job. So, with that being said, they go to the human world at times, and, it can be challenged by a way of who are we killing in a decree of, for Moxie, and that being something that he has to deal with. These little character moments seem to be integrated in the show. Now, that is interesting, as I've seen it pointed out that this show seems to be, as a overall thing, a comedy-first show. Now, granted that is probably still an accurate description, I would say that is not the full description of what I think this show is offering. I think the show has a lot more offering than just being a simple comedy, and I do think that it would be a disservice to say that it is just such. It is a comedy action-oriented show with some drama elements as well, as one episode titled Lululand is a great example of that drama that has come forth from the show, and has showcased that this show has a little bit more going on than just simple comedy, and whether those comedy elements are working or not. And my thoughts on this, as being as objective as possible, is that I feel like when you are a good enough writer, you can start to spread the genre that you are dealing with in very sufficient and good ways. And that's typically what a stronger writer typically can tend to do, is start to expand and not do it in a terrible way, aka what has Marvel been sort of sledging itself closer and closer and fell into in Phase 4. This approach seems to be far more superior in that regard, whereas, yes, the overall sentiment is that this show will be a comedy as the sort of the umbrella of the show. However, despite that being the umbrella, it is able to have that stick underneath the umbrella, the part that you can hold on to, and that is the drama. And I feel like when, it's an interesting thing to compare directly to Marvel, since, Marvel has typically done the action and the drama and the comedy and it's sort of melded in a more awkward way. I figure this is a perfect key point to make that direct comparison. So, to sort of jump off to talk about Marvel very briefly, or briefly anyway, is that as the shows have been progressing, it seems as if they are trying to insert more comedy, even at the expense of it getting the way of character drama. Whereas in this show, the drama is the offset, but it is not the offset that is ruining the comedy. No, based off of the writing, it is elevating the comedy. It is making the characters more connectable, and when funny events happen, now that you are more invested in the characters, you're realizing, oh, that's funnier. And I think that is the experience of a good writer, is what that tends to, equate to in Helluva Boss. both in Season 1 and indeed Season 2, based off of the first episode. And that seems to be the general consensus for the majority of people. Now, I have done my research, and I've come across some interesting criticisms that have come across Season 2. So the consensus of Season 1 seems to be is that Season 1 was overly popular, and deservedly so. It has earned that place by being so expertly animated, having the characters be a little quirky, and the drama moments have definitely elevated those moments with, and you can go back and see the context, and it could probably elevate the comedy even further at a second watching, which is something that is actually even more impressive when you think about it. So, with that, it was really bizarre to come across such interesting and, dare I even say, some wrong things said about Season 2, Episode 1 so far. As far as the criticisms I've seen of that episode have been fairly fascinating. Now, one of the videos I would say did the fairest job, I would say, would probably, I don't remember the title, I'll probably link it in the description. It is the closest I feel that it came to trying to explain, as objectively as that individual was trying to do as possible, but I do feel like there were still some things that were a little bit mistranslated, and that could have been easily, been something the person missed, or, there are any amount of things that could have happened with that particular video. Point being is that I saw 2 other videos criticizing Season 2 and Episode 1, and some of their criticisms were far more out there and far more bizarre, and I just went, huh? What are these people even talking about? From criticisms going as far as, and I'm not joking when I say this, someone said that Episode 2, Season 1 feels like fan fiction. And I went, what? What are you even on about? What is your reference to that? You have gone so far on that criticism, you need to explain what you mean by that, sir, when you say that. And I think they did a pretty piss-poor job in explaining what they meant by fan fiction, in terms of what was being presented in Season 2, Episode 1 of Helluva Boss. So that was probably one of the more bizarre criticisms I have heard about that episode. A fan fiction. It almost feels like when I heard that, I almost went in my head, that person probably hasn't read many fan fiction, probably. And if they have, they probably are, misinterpreting it and, shoving it into a show that I don't think that that level of criticism is anywhere near deserved. Because everything they brought up doesn't seem to line up with it being a fan fiction. It doesn't line up at all. A fan fiction, by the way, would be a fan-created thing, first of all, and the person, as far as I'm aware, who created the show, wrote the show episode, so you already lost the fan part of fan fiction, so you're already kind of fucked up when you wrote in your script, or, off the top of your cuff said it's fan fiction. A part of that definition means you would have to be a fan of the thing. I don't understand that criticism. It's so stupid. I'm sorry. It is so stupid. It is so far out there that when I heard it, I went, that can't be right. That can't be a proper criticism, and yet someone said it. It's so bizarre. But here we are. So, I feel like I'll do a deeper dive into Season 2, I keep wanting to say Episode 2, so I keep flip-flopping here. Anyway, Season 2, Episode 1 is that, what the general plot of that is, I'll do a deep dive in it, is that it is separated into 3 sections. There's the childhood section, there is the, still in the past, as close to the pilot as conceivably possible section, and then there's the current timeline in conjunction with Blitz's story portion of the episode. So it is constructed into 3 different sections, and people have been criticizing primarily the first part pretty heavily, and the final part pretty heavily. The middle part seems to be a little bit, criticized in different ways, but we'll get to that. So, in dealing with the first section, the childhood section, people have been criticizing in this section that they're not a fan of the cliche of they were childhood friends, that being Blitz and Stillus. They had a relationship that was established in episode 1 of season 1, the pilot, and people were enjoying the fact that this relationship came out of this sort of necessity and, almost being like estranged lovers. And people were upset to discover in this childhood flashback that actually they knew each other. And they put on the label of that equals bad writing. That is a poor criticism, if I were to ever see it. And I will explain why that is a poor criticism. So, in order to do that, I have to talk about cliches, though. So, there's the childhood cliche, right? They met each other, that particular cliche. Now, the unfortunate part about this is that everything in fiction and everything in storytelling has essentially become some sort of cliche. Every type of story beat you could potentially think of, there's probably a cliche for that thing. That is just how many stories exist in this, world at this point, is that, if you say a group of random things are happening, you'll probably eventually escape that, but, generally speaking, it is more likely that you will hit some sort of cliche while you're writing. The thing that these criticisms fail to establish is whether that cliche is being met with good writing or bad writing. And they automatically assume because it is the cliche that it is bad writing. That is not how that works. You can execute a cliche while still doing good writing. That is possible. I know, crazy, right? So let's take another cliche to give the perfect or a better example to flesh out this sort of wonky explanation. So, a very discouraged cliche is the liar revealed cliche. You have heard reviewers hate this cliche. Have you ever heard of several YouTubers? Generally speaking, most people tend to not like the liar revealed cliche, and it is because it has been done so much. However, I actually used to be in that camp, because I used to not think of separating what people generally are, liking or disliking, aka subjective stuff, with objectivity. What is happening? What is being executed? What are the characters actually doing that are making this either work or not work? The different split there is what I was failing to realize. So, in a liar revealed cliche, while, yes, more people tend to typically dislike it, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's automatically going to be poorly written. There could still be potentially a good liar revealed story. In fact, when in earlier iterations of the liar revealed story, it was typically seen as a pretty funny thing. And in fact, I would probably jump to the immediate example of a show or a movie that has the word liar in it, the movie called Liar Liar with Jim Carrey, as an example of this, as that is an example of the liar revealed cliche. And while I haven't seen that movie in a while, I'm pretty sure when I initially watched it anyways, it was really funny. I don't know how well it holds up currently, because again, I haven't seen it in such a long time. It could very well be that I would find a lot of wrong with that movie now, objectively speaking, but point still being standing is that you still can pull off a well-written cliche. So getting back to the childhood friends, you can write that really well. And for what it's worth, I think this episode does it really, really well. You learn where these characters are getting a lot of their behaviors or even what they appreciate established as a part of their childhood. And yes, some additional information is added on top of that character for Blitz being all interested in piracy, which, interestingly enough, is also its own cliche, nudge nudge wink wink, that being a child being interested in piracy cliche. This is not the first thing to do that. That is actually a very common cliche. I've seen it quite several times, actually, and I think it's more interesting to explore why that fascination is occurring rather than it just saying, oh, it's a cliche, therefore bad. Why it is occurring? Well, piracy is correlated with the idea of freedom, so it's telling us something about Blitz's character, too. Don't forget that. When, his fascination of pirates is coming up, it's not coming up out of nowhere, it's telling us something about his character. He's thinking about that typical cliched freedom that we have seen time and time again, and you can actually see why in the episode. He has a father who's willing to give him up for $5 and a condom, a slim fit condom to be specific. So yeah, the idea of wanting to be free of that and, sort of elevating that to piracy is also correlated with the next portion of the little childhood segment, which is when he is told to explicitly steal stuff from Stolas's home. So we have them as childhood friends, as we have been alluding to. So that's from Blitz's point of view. From Stolas's point of view, his father is trying to consistently not to deal with this, as he has many sons. He wants to give them the book. He wants the deal to get over with. You're going to marry this girl who we're going to talk about the Stella situation in just a bit. You got to marry this girl, and that is something he is not interested in, as he immediately cries. And Stolas's dad, Paimon, wants nothing to do with him. He wants him to stop crying. He wants to, get him to do this whole thing and shut the fuck up, essentially, is his attitude. So he brings him to the circus. Well, he doesn't actually appear there. He appears in a mirror, showing how little he actually cares. Minimalistically so. And at first, Stolas appears bored, but then of course he comes across eye contact with Blitz, and you get the very interesting blush, which tells us more of it gives us a more romantic, feeling when we see it. When a character is blushing, it tells us there's a more romantic feeling blooming inside of that character, and it is of a male-on-male relationship, which is very, very uncommon still, by the way. And I can't believe I have to point that out, that this is the rarity, that, this couple is so rare. I can still name the amount of gay characters on both hands, probably, and not have to additionally add, the 11, 12. I probably wouldn't have to do that for the amount of gay characters I've seen, and, in media in general. I probably could if I really, really struggled and, like, did research, but off the top of my head, I don't think I could make it past 10. Still. So that should tell you something. I don't know, maybe we need more of that woke gay agenda. The gay agenda of, we just want to see more gay characters, and for me, I want to see them done well written, and for me, this was well written. So, this is giving me one of the first examples of, oh, this is actually a really well done gay character couple. Like, can I list any other gay characters that are currently well written? Not that are popping in my head. Write in the comments if you can think of a lot of well-written gay characters. That is something you can probably can't do on even one hand. So that should tell you something even more specific. So there you go. Anyways, so I appreciate that they did that. From a subjective point of view as well, I feel like that is something that needs to be done a little bit more here on the landscape of media in general. But I digress. So we know that he has a general interest in that. The father also notes that, but he will still buy Blitz for the day, at least, for the minimum amount of $5 in the slim fit condom. Now, they get to the place and they start robbing it right away after Blitz convinces him to do so. And people's next criticism seems to stem from, well, why didn't Blitz get caught, or why didn't he get punished? And I went, that criticism also doesn't actually make a lot of sense when you put it in context with what we just heard. Paimon said in the episode explicitly that he wants nothing to do with, Stolas. He's gonna fuck off. He's not gonna be in that house more than he needs to be. Are you fucking kidding me? He's gone. He's not in that house anymore. You joking? What is this? It's like, yeah, I could mentally map that from the episode. That is told to me in the episode. I don't know where this criticism of why didn't he get caught? Why wasn't it so hard? Why was it so easy or whatever? It's like, it would be easy. Paimon's fucking gone. I'm sorry. That criticism doesn't make any sense. And from Blitz's point of view, Stolas' point of view, he seems to remark about this. Now, this could be more subjective, and I'll get to it, because it deals with the middle section a little bit more. But anyways, so I guess I should talk about the Stella thing since it did come up earlier. The point that people are pissed about her is that they showed an image of her throttling some other demon or whatever, and that alluded to the audience that were criticizing it explicitly, that they were upset that she would no longer be a three-dimensional character. Now that's an interesting criticism, and at first I thought there was some merit to it, and I thought about that one a lot more than the other ones. And granted, subjectively speaking, I would agree, actually. I prefer three-dimensional characters. I love characters that go on character arcs a lot more than what I would refer to as flat or even one-dimensional characters. However, just because a character is more flat or even one-dimensional, that also doesn't mean that they are poorly written or poorly executed. That is a very important distinction to make. You can, technically speaking, write a really well done one-dimensional character. Jack Sparrow. He's a one-dimensional character. Prove me wrong in the comments. If you think that Jack Sparrow is a three-dimensional character, prove me wrong, 'cause he's not. Spoiler alert. I'm gonna give you the easy answer and just tell you the answer. He's not. He's a one-dimensional character but he's a character that everyone enjoyed, or like the majority of people who at least watched Pirates 1 enjoyed really much. And they even enjoy him in the more worse movies. He's a fun character to sort of enjoy that experience with, because he's such a quirky character. But that's it. That's his character. He's a quirky character. That's it. That's his thing. That's his shtick, almost. Like, yeah, that's the point. So, there comes a point where you have to realize you can write a one-dimensional character really well. And if you're thinking, oh, well, I'll counter that with, well, Stella is a villain, therefore it's bad. You're not getting off that easy off the hook. Villains can also be one-dimensional and still be well written. It is possible. Doofenshmirtz from Phineas and Ferb. Well, actually, I don't think I would count. I don't know if I would count that. He seems to typically go back to where he was, but it sort of like arcs in a weird way. His character is weird, so I might not count that. But I'll give you one that's gonna shock you, because everybody loves the character, but they probably wouldn't admit that he's one-dimensional or flat, but I'm gonna say he is Joker, or most interpretations of Joker. In fact, the most like deviant from that I have seen was probably from the more recent Joker movie, where they did a deeper dive or a deeper study into that character. And a reminder, I gave that movie a 10 out of 10, by the way, so I was still reviewing that objectively speaking, and subjectively speaking, yes, I would still agree that three-dimensional characters fascinate me more personally than one-dimensional characters, but I can still enjoy one-dimensional characters. The one thing that they would typically have to have in common is that they are well written. And for what it's worth, I think that Stella fits into that category. I think she's a well-written character. I think she's meant to be despised and hated, and that could very well be the point of her entire character. And you know what? Secret, that's fine. If that is the point of her being a one-dimensional, bitch, that's fine. You can still write that really, really well. Oh my god. God forbid, you don't have to make every character in your show three-dimensional. You don't have to give every character in your story a character arc. It is not a requirement. It is not a necessity of the content you are consuming. And let's not forget that whole conversation comes from the idea of an image. Not any of the words that she says. An image of when she was a child has put people off this railing that she's always been this way. Well, dear person, I have heard criticize this. How do you know that that thing in the image before that wasn't a nice person? How do you know? It was an image. It was a distilled one-frame image. How could you possibly tell that, I don't know, maybe what if we get a background story of her character and we actually learn in that episode she might have been abused herself, maybe even. How do we know? We don't know. We don't know enough about her character yet. That's the thing about her character, is that we actually still don't know that much about her. She could still technically turn out to be a three-dimensional character. We don't know. We don't have enough information to tell. But if she remains a one-dimensional character, again, that's still not even necessarily a bad thing. So there's still that on top of what I'm saying. So, let's put that criticism to rest. No, I don't think Stella is a poorly written character. I don't think that criticism is strong enough. Based solely on an image, particularly. It seems bizarre to say that, especially coming from writers who have published works before. Surely they have made flat or one-dimensional characters in some of their works. Surely they must have, right? Or are they so well off that they can make every character that they have in every story three-dimensional, and they just, never felt the need to? Which, fine, whatever, but you can't necessarily criticize something that you might not even understand fully. That is not the way to do it. Especially if you're being doing it as objectively as possible. And I'm trying to do that. So, I don't think that there's as much wrong as with Stella as I think people put on that moment when we realize that that's what the character is, at least in this episode, at least in this current context. So getting back to the middle portion, it is, again, sort of correlating with the pilot part of the thing. So we see that from Stolas' point of view, that Stella is putting on this not divorced yet party, and that he wants, he's kind of sick of the idea. But he begrudgingly goes, for social reasons, I assume, and Blitz is brought there after trying to sneak in. So he brings him over and has the same blush and has a more even prominent sort of flirtatious opening as they are led to their one-on-one encounter. And thus the more awkward comedy, as I have heard that being a thing, ensues of Blitz trying to get the book, while Stolas is trying to awkwardly at first flirt with, but then sort of back off from his own flirtatious advances when Blitz advances the flirting to enhance it to biting all the way to, well, that's actually what, Stolas has kind of been secretly almost desiring this whole time. From that point A to point B, something has had to have changed very drastically for this character, or, maybe there's always just been this thing that's been developing, and now it has reached its, dare I use the word, climax, because it's a sex sort of ish scene without the actual sex. Well, actually, that's not even true. We get it in text. That is very much implied. So, that being said, it is all about Blitz trying to get the book, and still is trying to rekindle this sort of connection. And they say the criticism here is that some of the dialogue was a bit clunky, of like this whole remember me part. I barely remember your name, but I do remember it had an O. I do think that is the one fair criticism I would agree with, but then it also, to play in what's in the episode, he does drink, some strong shit, I think. I'm not a drink expert, so I'm not entirely sure, but I'm assuming that has to be strong, especially when he drank the whole bottle of, I forget what it even was at this point. But point being, he drinks some strong stuff, so he's sort of, foibling around a little bit there in this section. And he still has some wits about him, so he's able to kick the book away. And this is where he, again, this is a subjective thing, so this is my feeling on the matter. He says something, and I'm going to be paraphrasing here, about him knowing that Blitz made an interesting entrance or something of the sort, and when I heard him say that, I thought that was a reference to him explaining that he really didn't actually care that Blitz was stealing, aka, people also being mad that Stolas didn't punish Blitz for stealing, even though I thought that line was meant to be there to, sort of hand wave off the whole ordeal of them as kids. So yes, the biting occurs, and it leads to Blitz sort of awkwardly trying to position himself, but Stolas keeps repositioning them into more, sexual-oriented positioning, let's say that for sure, in which Blitz tries to escape, but he's goaded right back into the having guilt tripping into having sex. Now, none of that, as far as I'm aware, breaks any of their character development we have established from the pilot or any other episode featuring Blitz or Stolas. So again, I'm not really sure where this breaking of any of their characters' criticisms are coming from. And I would probably have to look over them again, but again, I heard some real... And this is where the fanfiction part comes in, of like, yeah, that's where that part comes in as well, so I don't know. I don't know how much of that criticisms hold any strong water. Anyway, so they have that night of passion. Blitz, the next day, as we see him in the pilot, runs off, and we have a very similar shot with a few more added flares to it for it being Season 2, Episode 1, of him escaping. So there's that. And Blitz gets to... Oh, sorry, Stolas. I keep mixing them up for some reason. Stolas gets to celebrate that this is the beginning of their first step towards a divorce. And it seems like the more current timeline, when it's matching up with Blitz's, is like... Okay, so we had that level of divorce where we're able to separate, when we have the daughter. And it seems like he's like, no, you need to get out. Like, this is the level of divorce I want now. Is the third segment, which he gets his song, which is a very nice song. It's well sung, and someone actually criticized that it wasn't well sung. That was a really bizarre claim. I've never heard that one come from anyone else, other than that one person that I saw. Okay. Weird thing to attempt to point out, but I don't think that's even true. Poor singing would probably come well more across, and more people would probably say something about that if that was the case. So there generally seems to be a poor or a minority criticism of that one detail that seems to not have any traction or any other supporting people behind it at all. And after his little song, he has to deal with Stella again, and of course people go back to the whole Stella being a one-dimensional character, and her, enforcing that being a bitchy character comes back, but Stella says wants nothing to do with it. He wants her gone, and that leaves him in a state very similar to how Blitz was off in his episode. And that was that particular episode. So I would say that overall, I think most of the criticisms that I heard didn't really pan out, or either far too flung out to be even true, or someone didn't pay enough attention in the episodes to catch some of the things that could explain some of the details that they might have missed. I'm not willing to wager or, claim a direct, thing. I did comment on one of their videos saying that I think that review was a little bit poor of theirs. I did go out of my way to do that. So I would hope that the same courtesy could be led toward me. If you have any criticisms of this review, feel free to. You can say the lighting's shitty, and that's accurate. I can't really do much about that, though, unfortunately, right now. Anyway, overall, I would still say that Helluva Boss is still a rather unique experience, and if you are within the, mature range, I would easily recommend this show. It has the proper amount of comedy still within it, and underneath that it is bunkered down and elevated by its drama, and is more stylized with its intense and creative action scenes. Now, before I close off, I do want to point out that before Season 2, it seems like the most heavily criticized episode seems to be in Consensus, the Cherub episode, which is the one that features the angels that descend upon them. Now, I would have to watch that episode again because I don't remember a lot of the details off the top of my head. However, I will say at minimum, I think that idea was inevitably going to happen. They were going to deal with angels at some point in this show, dealing with hell. I think that idea was going to happen at some point. And just to say, if you want a fan fiction, if you want to truly know what a fan fiction is, I'm a fan of the show, so let me provide you with an actual fan fiction. And maybe, who knows what'll happen? Nothing will happen, right? Because it's a fan fiction. I can't, guide the show in a certain way. That's not how it works. Anyway, so here's my fan fiction. Here's my original character. So, let me get a little creative here. A archangel. That would be an interesting concept to see in the show in general. An archangel, which maybe those cherubs became archangels when they fell from heaven. I'm not even sure if that's the direction they want to go with those characters, if they ever bring them back. But an archangel, who has actually may even perhaps been there even longer than they have, has gotten way more used to the concepts of hell. Or maybe isn't even newer. I'm not sure which one I would slide towards yet currently. Point being is that they encounter Stolas's daughter, I can't remember her name off the top of my head. I do apologize that I can't remember every character's name. Octavia. Sorry. I had a brain fart there. This character meets with Octavia and sort of convinces her to join Imp. That is a fanfiction idea. This archangel is fascinated with the idea of this whole thing with the demons going to the human world, and, he was so tired of heaven, he's willing to, go to this level of extreme. I think that would be a fun idea, but that is a fanfiction because I am a fan writing fiction for the show. That's how fanfiction actually works. Wow. So there you go. There's my fanfiction. Hope you enjoyed that one. As far as a score would be concerned, I'm going to probably give this show a 9 out of 10, probably. It's really, really good. I'm not even sure how I would not categorize it as a 10 out of 10 currently. But, I mean, again, there are some holes in my head about that season 1 that I'm trying to remember, so I'll stick with a 9 out of 10 for now until I rewatch, and maybe I might readjust. But, point being, still an overall extremely positive review, being as objective as possible. How about that? And if you ended up enjoying this full review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to Petition to help smaller YouTubers get a tab that will feature smaller YouTubers. Wow, wouldn't that be neat? Would it be more interesting if more YouTubers can be seen? You can also support me with my Patreon and PayPal. Directly, you can help support me in my channel, or you could join my Discord server and help, or, find other YouTubers, talk and communicate and do all that fun stuff. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye!